right, and welcome to podcast 9 of the actual astronomy podcast. Podcast? Is that what we're? Yeah, that's what we're
Yeah,
calling
podcast. Yeah.
podcast. So, this is our observing the night sky for May 2020. So, to kick it off, Shane, have you been out doing any observing as an actual amateur astronomer?
Yes. Just trying to think here since the last time we talked. I think I've only been out once, or was it twice? Doesn't really matter. But I was out looking at Venus again, as that seems to be the topic of interest between you and I lately, trying to
Mhm.
tease out some of the cloud detail as well as that ashen light. And the last time out, I did experiment with some colored filters just to see if that would enhance or add anything to the view.
Yeah.
And I'm just not a fan of those colored filters for planetary observing.
So,
I
what are you using for colored filters there, Shane? Like, what brand are you using?
brand is Antares, so
Okay.
a Canadian brand. The filters are made in Japan. They're inch and a quarter.
Okay.
And I have a little filter wheel, a manual filter wheel. So you
Yeah.
load up, well, you could put up to 5 filters in, but I always keep one of the slots empty just
Yeah.
for the unfiltered view. So then I have 4 filters, and you can just rotate this dial on the side and then quickly go through different colored filters to see what you like. And the beauty of that is you're not having to unscrew and screw filters into each eyepiece as you're observing.
So, I guess, and so what size telescope are you using?
I was using the telemeter, so the 63 millimeter achromatic refractor.
Okay. And so, and I found this too, when you're using like a smaller instrument, there's a darker color palette and there's a lighter color palette to the filters that are recommended. Like, I don't know that much about filters, um, color filters anyway, but I do know, like, I bought the lighter color palette filters from Lumicon. Like, you can
Okay.
buy them by the set,
Hmm.
and I found those really good.
Okay. So what do you know what Ratten numbers you were using?
Oh, I don't have it on this computer here. I don't think. Let me look really, really quick. I do not have it on this sheet in
I
front.
was using, let me just take a quick look here. I think number 15, which is like a gold color.
Yeah, that's a darker yellow.
Yeah, I was using 21, which is a deeper red.
Hmm.
A 31, which is a magenta.
21 should be
Um,
orange.
yeah,
Okay.
you're right. Sorry, orange, not red.
That's one of the lighter ones I know of. Yeah.
Yeah, the 31 is actually not an Antares filter. It's from Vernon Optics,
Okay.
the
Yeah,
makers of
that's
the
the
Brandon
magenta.
oculars.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
with that magenta filter, because I was looking at that, and it doesn't have the brand. That's a Vernon scope filter, and because of that, it has the Brandon uh, proprietary filter threads. So, did you buy that like used with an adapter, or how did you find the adapter? Because I was looking at those, could not find an adapter anywhere.
Well, when I bought mine, they sold the adapter. So I bought the adapter with the filter, and then there's a little, I don't know what it's called, but it's a little ring that holds the filter glass inside the housing. You just loosen that off, and then you can transfer the actual glass filter to the other ring to hold it, and then use it in regular inch and a quarter eyepieces.
Oh, so it came with like a little tool or something?
No, I just used, I think, a little precision screwdriver.
Okay.
It really wasn't that difficult, actually. I'm
So,
not sure if they still sell that adapter, or it's not really an adapter. It's just a whole different ring to house the
oh,
filter.
I see. Huh. Interesting. I wonder if it would fit. Like, because I would buy one because I have like some really old and like the free filters that you get when you buy your first telescope kind of thing that are 1 1/4.
Oh yeah.
And but I mean, if I can just buy a little spanning wrench from a Gina or something like that and take it apart, like if I could get the number 30. But anyway, I went and bought, since I couldn't get that. I'd read about these quote unquote Mars filters. I guess they are called Mars filters from Orion and Celestron that they had a few years ago.
Yeah.
And now I thought they were out of production, but then when I was kind of just sort of poking around on Amazon this morning, they had one available. So I was like, well, and it was pretty inexpensive, I think it was $30 or so. So I said,
Hmm.
hey, I'm just gonna get that one just to try it out. I've got my pale color palette filters, and then I think I want to get a contrast booster as we come into planetary season here. So
Yeah, I have the Bader contrast booster, and I was using that this week as well with my Zeiss Jenna Ortho at 16 millimeter, and it it was okay. Like it really helped control the false color that the Acromat was producing.
yeah, yeah, because it has some either uh, spurious color suppression with that contrast booster, and yeah, like to be honest, like I even notice both atmospheric as well as some, especially outside the center of the field, even in like the Pentax XWs. Like I notice secondary color, as you get towards the edge of any wide field ocular.
Mhm.
So I often thought it'd be helpful to have with those when I'm observing the planet. So yeah, cool. Yeah, so I get my filter slider, as I was saying.
Yeah. So did you test it out and see how it works?
Not not really. I opened it up and I put it on the telescope, and this was just yesterday that I finally got around to it. And it was just like, the hand of cloud came over the horizon, and the whole sky just totally clouded up as soon as I
Yeah.
had that thing in the scope. But yeah, so it looks like, and this is the Lumicon multiple filter selector thingamabob. It's a real gadgety kind of thing that I didn't actually buy. It's pretty expensive. I ran the numbers, $640 Canadian, and I bought a diagonal from a company that was going into business, and this is what they sort of, make a long story short, this is what they sent me. So, which is something I always kind of wanted, but it looks like it doesn't take many filters. Like there's not as many that are compatible with it. They got to be very low profile filters, such as the Lumicon filters. So anyhow, you measured yours. You said it was what? It was 7 mils for without the threads or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
And mine are like 11, even for the Orion, which I thought was pretty small. And the Orion doesn't fit. It's too fat. It's a 49 millimeter filter, it turns
Oh
out.
wow.
And yeah, so it's a millimeter too wide because they've made them to fit. Of course, we're using 48 millimeter filters, so it's just coincidental that none of my filters that I've had for years will fit. So my wife
All
actually
right.
said she felt really bad because I've been through this real struggle with this diagonal, right, which I mostly blame you for. But because you
I deserve it.
recommend
I deserve it. Yeah.
you recommend. I'm just kidding. But she said that she was actually going to buy me a filter. So
Oh, look at
yeah,
look at
so
that. Turning lemons into lemonade.
yeah, let me tell you. So anyhow, and I'm not sure about the backspace on it. Like it has, I measured 35 more millimeters of backspace required.
Oh
So
wow. That's quite a bit.
yeah, because it sits up really high. I mean, it has like the barrel, and it's like they made the barrel the same length that they should have made the barrel for the regular diagonal, but they didn't subtract the extra little bit of space that there's like two brackets that kind of mesh together, and they're about probably half of that extra space. And you need a little bit of extra space for the filters. So I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. I think I have a lot of backspace on my 60, almost like I'm right at the very end of a 2.5 inch feather touch.
Mhm.
So I'm pretty sure that I can eat into the majority of that with my low powers. But yeah, and they actually sent me another diagonal, eh?
Another one, really?
Another one that also is one of these ones that requires a multiple filter selector.
Another
So
Lumicon?
yeah, so the first one, they actually sent me totally the wrong thing the first time. I got a 95%. I ordered the enhanced, so it wasn't really that great a deal. And of course, I didn't have all the parts to make either a regular diagonal or a filter selecting diagonal. And then when I talked to them, they sent me a whole kit, and the kit is for the enhanced. So I finally got my enhanced one, which is great. But I don't have the barrel for the eyepiece to use one in regular mode. So I'm going to get in touch with them. I did write them a couple weeks ago. Lumicon they go by another company name now, but I'm going to call them. Maybe that will work out better. I mean, they're supposed to be pretty good, the people that are running it now, Farpoint Astro. Anyhow, and they might not have understood my question, because I was like, I got this and I need that, and what do you think, and kind of thing. They were probably like, this guy's, doesn't know what he's talking about. You can't buy them as separate pieces, right? So it's just the way that I ended up with these things. But yeah, so I think in the worst case scenario, once we kind of get through this horrible stay-at-home pandemic, is I could probably get somebody, maybe even somebody I'm talking with right now, um, to unthread or remove the barrel from my other diagonal, like my old diagonal, because I think it's pretty much done. Like it's,
Mhm.
you know, it's almost 20 years old and it's got a lot of miles, and they weren't good miles. It's not like I just went observing in this beautiful, pristine, you know, environment that didn't have a lot of dust and blah blah blah. Like, I mean, we've been going out and going to really dusty desert like areas and doing a lot of observing, and it's seen a lot of car temperatures probably into the 50s and 60s, and a lot of minus 40s and 50s. And I think that the diagonal has just lived out its life, and pretty close to 20 years of that. I mean, it's starting to show a little bit of wear, and really it's not that bad, but I think it's just time, right? So I think I know the screws and everything should all work. I just kind of want to call or find somebody that can confirm that, and then maybe I could ask nicely and find somebody who could take the one off and put it on the other, because that would be kind of cool. Then I'd have two. One I could use with the multiple filter selector, and then one I could just use as a regular diagonal. But I love those Lumicon diagonals.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that would be kind of neat to try is do some A/B comparisons with the one that is 20 years old with the brand new one. Because I've read some anecdotal reports on cloudy nights. Some people say that these things do deteriorate. Just the mirror itself deteriorates over time, and
Yeah,
that diagonals are disposable equipment because they just kind of wear out over time as the mirror deteriorates. Although some people argue against that, saying no, that's just not possible. So I'd like to see from my own eyes if there's a noticeable difference, or uh,
yeah.
just to prove that out.
Yeah. Like, especially if they can send me up a barrel from Farpoint Astro, then I'll be happy to do that. And I could even like give it to you if you were, because I think you might have more. You're more of a handyman than I am, for sure. It doesn't take much. Um, and it seems like a very strange screw head. And I know I
Hmm.
don't have a screwdriver. It's like a 5-point star or something like that. I do
Oh
not.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I have no idea. I'm looking at this going, what is that?
I can help you out there, my
Yeah.
friend.
So I mean, if I can get one, then you could just come pick it up. You could take it, whenever I can get that, and you can knock yourself out, because having three diagonals now, I've got plenty, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, so we'll see how that goes. So I've had more than a few sessions. I've had 5 sessions this week.
Oh, good for you. That's really good.
So I had 3 sessions on Venus.
Hmm.
2 were really good. One was awesome. I think that was on Friday night. I think you were it
Okay.
as well. We were talking about that one
Yeah, yeah.
via text. And one was really, really bad. So I actually had the best and the worst night. I can't remember which was the really bad one. It might have been Thursday or Wednesday or something. It was just, I looked at the sky and it looked really bad, but it was clear. It was really clear. I couldn't resist going out. And, it's one of those things, you just had to try it. And wow, it was, boy, it was just boiling, right? Like I
Mm.
couldn't even, yeah, you couldn't even focus. And so, yeah, saw a few more clouds on Venus. I think I did another sketch. I think I texted you that sketch I did on the Friday night.
Yeah.
And I thought Friday was so good that I actually went and I texted my wife to see if she wanted to come out and take a peek. So even she came out and she took a long look. And so that's kind of a rare event there, because she's sort of had enough astronomy to last many lifetimes for her already. But yeah, she stayed at the eyepiece for about 10 or 12 minutes, like just looking, and I'd move it and kind of get it adjusted. And yeah, it was really nice. And then I had 2 decent mornings on Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars. And they were okay. You know, I can start one of the mornings. I could kind of see maybe the Great Red Spot or the GRS as we call it, and then yeah, the other morning it was a little bit more unstable. But I could see the bands, like the two main bands, the equatorial zone. I could see some of the shading to the north. I could definitely see like the limb dimming. And with Saturn, I could just see the rings. I couldn't even see Titan.
Oh, wow.
And
Well, it's pretty
then
low still, isn't it?
yeah, and then Mars was like, wow. Like I couldn't even get a focus on Mars until yesterday morning, and finally I got it focused in, and I could actually see the disk, and that was a small triumph. Because it's kind of been like, you know, it almost get the sensation like you're doing astronomy from the bottom of a swimming pool, because the atmosphere is almost like you're looking through so much density of moisture and, you know, whatever else is in the sky between you and space, that that it really kind of starts impacting the views quite a bit. Yeah,
Which telescope are you using? The
just the
TAC,
60. Yeah,
yeah,
just the TAC 60.
with the extender?
With the extender, yeah. So at home, I run it always with the extender. And when I'm away, I always run it without the extender. So it's really nice. It's like two telescopes in one. It's a 60 millimeter f10 at home. And on the road, it's a 60 millimeter f6. And that thing has a lot of miles on it now. I think it rubbed in the suitcase when I traveled with it last time, because it's got kind of a black mark on the lens cover, as well as on the cell. But I'm not selling it anytime soon. That's fine. Works perfectly good. Totally in alignment. It's really good. Saturday morning, really bad battle with the safety undercuts in -2 cold.
Mm.
I'd left the telescope inside. I put it out to cool. And I've noticed this, if I leave it out and with the eyepieces out and everything's cooled, it's all good. But I put the telescope out for about 20 or 30 minutes. Then I went out with the eyepieces. And then when I was trying to switch between my low power finder and my high power, it was a battle. Like, yeah, like you wouldn't believe. And you're kind of tired, you know, it's whatever it is, 4:30 a.m. And yeah, not so great. And yesterday morning, I had a nice view. I don't know if Callisto was in occultation with Jupiter, but you could definitely see that it was just on the limb. I didn't know which moon it was. I looked it up in the software afterwards, but yeah. So what's an occultation?
When one object moves kind of in front of the other.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so it looked like it was either just coming out or just going in behind Jupiter, and so Jupiter would be the occulting body here. So had
Well,
some.
you're a brave man getting up that early. I struggle with those ones. The usually the only time I'm up that early is with a fishing rod in my hand.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, you know, I kind of want to get a bit of a jump on observing Mars, but let me tell you, it was like, you know, when the fly lands in your beer in the summer when you're out in the patio
Mhm.
and it kind of is flailing. That's what Mars looked like through the telescope.
like, like the fly in your beer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was pretty bad. So I've kind of made up a bit of a moon and planet roundup for the month,
Okay.
and then maybe we'll talk a little bit about what you're looking forward to for your observing for the month, Shane. And as we go through, you know, we can discuss that as well. But we've got quite a few pairings between the moon, Jupiter, Saturn, and then Mars, as well as Venus and Mercury. So these are, you know, basically the biggest and brightest planets that we have in our sky, and people can have the opportunity. If people are getting new to astronomy, and when I'm teaching my intro astronomy classes, always recommending to use the opportunities when the moon will be beside one of the planets, which you can look up by going to skymaps.com, or, you know, go into the details here in a moment, and then that can allow you to figure out which of these bright objects is which. And then of course we have a telescope, makes it a whole lot easier. So on May 12th in the morning sky, we have Jupiter, Saturn that are going to pair with the moon. And that's just about a day past full moon. And it's a really great opportunity to understand which is which. So Jupiter is going to be just above the moon in the early morning hours of May 12th. So you get up early. Here, that's going to be like around a 4 a.m. time span, and they're going to be really close. Like the whole thing's going to occur in about, I think it's like about a 5-degree circle-ish between how far away Jupiter and Saturn are, and then the moon is going to be sort of just below them, more below Jupiter than Saturn. But the whole thing I saw will actually fit into a low power field of my telescope. So I'm pretty excited to get up and take a look at that.
Yeah, that's a really tight grouping. That'll be really neat to see.
Yeah. So speaking of degrees, maybe we should just like refresh people and like what a degree actually is.
Yeah, yeah. So if you hold your fist out at arm's length, the width of your hand or the width of your fist is essentially 10 degrees in the sky.
Yeah, and then I think it's a pinky is about 1 degree or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds right.
And, that's really all we do, because typically you're not trying to determine areas that are that much larger or not that much on that much of a larger scale, because from horizon to overhead, of course, that's 90 degrees. So that's just going to be 9 fists. You can actually measure that out if you want, but typically we're never trying to measure that kind of distance. Typically it's something like this, which is in the order of just a few fingers, really, or I guess maybe 5 or 6 fingers. So Jupiter and Saturn, they're going to get to about 5 degrees apart by mid-May, by around the May 12th to May 15th range, and then they're going to gradually increase to about 8 degrees by September. So, kind of based on what Shane just described, and knowing that they're going to be 5 degrees apart mid-May, and then they're going to increase to nearly that fist size by September. Like people can kind of sort of follow that as they come in the evening sky in particular. So as you know, my 60 millimeter has about a 7.5 true field. So I'm really looking forward to getting them all in the same field of view at the time. Speaking of 60 mils, I'll go on a bit of a tangent, but I watched that Japanese auction site this morning when it was cloudy, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
like in true style, I did get up, and if it was clear, I would have observed, but it was not. And so it actually went for a pretty good discount, but not the $900 that you and I were. Did you see what it went for?
Yeah, 2,500.
Yeah, it went for about 2,500. But you know what? That is still a really good deal, because that 60 odd millimeter telescope typically would go for I think about more like $2,000 to $3,000 American.
And which telescope is that again, Chris, for
It was
everybody listening?
Takahashi, and I'm still watching for one, so I'm not going to advertise. But
Oh yeah, it's back to the
maybe,
fisherman thing. You never give away your fishing line.
yeah, exactly. Maybe
Yeah.
one day, I'll get one. But that one, yeah, pretty close. To a 30% discount off what the usual fare would be to get into that. But yeah, in reality though, I probably shouldn't get such an instrument, because it would essentially duplicate what I already have in the FS60Q, and doesn't offer that. It doesn't afford the ability to go from the F6 to the F10, and it's quite a bit heavier. It's like a 6 or 6.5 pound instrument. Doesn't have a 2-inch focuser. You'd have to adapt that to it. So, and then I've even seen where people typically get it if they're going to actually use it. Some people will get it and flip it, see if they can make a couple $100 over a weekend or something. And then people that do tend to buy it, they kind of wait till they find a good one. They'll send it off to Switzerland, and there's a person over there, and he does some testing, and he'll actually recenter the lenses and put proper spacers in and all, like, and so you're going to be paying twice for it. But by the time you get it shipped, tested, figure out the weaknesses, ship it over there, get a new focuser, this is easily going to run you into the $4,000 range. And for a 60 millimeter telescope, which I already have, that is awesome, I don't think I can do it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. The optical perfection that those telescopes are famous for. I don't even know how much of that's perceptible by the eye compared to how good your tack is that you have right now.
Yeah, I mean, I have a Takahashi, so
Yeah.
it's not like I'm going from some other instrument to a Takahashi. I already have one, and the one that I have is, I think it's about as good as 60 as you can get. I can't believe what it's showing me, and it can also do planets. And that telescope, although people say it's color free and whatever, nobody ever raves about the planets through it. Whereas my 60 is really a planet killer for a 60. I've never heard of people seeing what I've seen through it, and like I said, I don't think it's necessarily my observing skill, because sometimes I'll think, oh, I wonder if this is visible, or I'll plunk it out and take a look. I'm like, whoa, like I can't believe I'm seeing clouds on Venus. So apparently, yeah, it's pretty rough. So, and yeah, and the FS60 is super light. It only weighs whatever it is, 3 pounds or 3.2 pounds or something. It's nothing, right? So
Yeah, super light.
yeah, to go from 3 pounds to 3 kilograms that's a stretch. So, but speaking of Venus, Venus is going to remain well placed for the first week or so of May, but then it's really going to start rapidly descending into the western horizon. And as it descends, it will become a razor thin crescent. So it's coming up on us on our inside. This is what's happening, and so it's gonna turn into this crescent. And then it's going to get too close to the sun to observe. But right before it goes into conjunction with the sun, and that's when things line up with the sun. That's what we say, it comes into solar conjunction. It goes into this last hurrah, because Mercury will rise out of the west very rapidly, and on the 21st, it's going to pair with Venus, and they're going to lay exactly 1 degree apart in the sort of the western sky. And Mercury will be just southwest of Venus. So now, is this a conjunction? It's a conjunction. So what's a conjunction? Do you know? Do you know like the technical?
Not off the top of my head.
So when I was a member in the Halifax RESC, they always had like this big deal about whether it was a conjunction or whether it was an appulse. And so I always thought that a conjunction was whenever two things were really close in the sky, I would just say that's a conjunction.
Yeah.
And apparently that wasn't correct. And they would constantly correct people on this, as if it was like your English teacher correcting your grammar kind of thing. It was pretty funny. So anyway, a conjunction occurs only when the two objects have the same right ascension or the same ecliptic longitude as observed from Earth.
Oof, now you're getting
Otherwise,
technical.
otherwise it's an appulse, right? So I kind of have this drilled into me, right? So because I would go out and I would see, oh, there's Venus and Mercury, and I'd say, oh, there's a conjunction, and then it would be like, no, this is not a conjunction because they don't have this, and when an appulse is, this is just simply when they're really close in the sky. That's the only difference. But typically people use conjunction and appulse. Well, basically conjunction is a synonym of appulse. They usually don't get into all that. But I always have to say it because some people are a little bit more particular about their observing terminology. So,
well, now we know who.
All right, now we'll wait for the appulse to die down, and then we'll move on
Yes.
to the next.
Oh, yes.
So Mercury. So on May 24th, there's going to be the trio of Venus, Mercury, and a 2-day-old thin crescent moon lined up. So you're going to have, this is one of those really great opportunities. You're going to have the very razor thin crescent of Venus, and then you're also going to have the crescent moon very close by as well. So you'd be able to kind of go and take a look. Keep in mind, these things are in the realm of, if you have a pretty low power telescope or a moderately powered binocular, you may even be able to fit like the moon and Venus in. And then you can see both crescents. And I've seen this a few times, and it's really cool to get people to look through the telescope. Of course, right now, the only person who can look through is my wife, but I'll get her to look at it. And it's really amazing to see the expression on people's faces, because they're like, wait, what? It's a crescent and a crescent, like, because people are usually only familiar with the moon ever giving us crescents. So pretty cool.
Yeah, and the crescents of Venus can be, quite extreme. Like you're talking about this razor thin one, like it evolves, very similarly to the moon. And
yeah.
You wouldn't know that just looking up in the sky, because it's so reflective. It appears as a very bright pinpoint of light. But when you put some optics on it, then you start to see these phases, and you can watch them evolve over a period of time.
Yeah, and I was doing a little bit of reading, and I made some book recommendations, and I've been been buying a lot of books. You've been buying instruments. I'm buying some books. And one of the ones that I recommended was the Webb's Celestial Objects for Common Telescopes, Volume 1 and 2. This is Volume 1, deals with the planets. And I think in there they talk about this 12-year-old boy back years ago, and he was actually able to see one of these Venusian crescents, naked eye, not knowing, not preconditioned or knowing anything about astronomy, but had asked somebody, went and had asked an astronomer, said, "Hey, I noticed the star, but it was, it was really bright, but it was a crescent. I could see a crescent. What is this thing?" And they were like, "Whoa, you were able to discern the crescent of Venus naked eye." So that
Wow.
is one way that young people can really take advantage of their eyesight that us people that aren't as young anymore are not able to. Although I don't think my vision was ever that good that I noticed Venus as a crescent when I was 12. So
No, no, that sounds phenomenal.
yeah. So then on the morning of May 28th, there's going to be a double shadow transit of Jupiter.
Ooh.
It's at 8:40 time, universal time, 8:40
Oh,
a.m.
that's
universal
that's
time.
not great for us.
Yeah, so this is 2:45 a.m. for us. Now, when I Googled this, I put in UT and immediately I got Utah time, which apparently
Oh,
I didn't know about. So be careful when you're Googling the universal time that you're actually getting universal time and not Utah time. It is somewhat, for us, it's only an hour difference, but depending on where somebody might be in the world, it could be very different. And so what's going to happen is two of Jupiter's moons are going to pass in front of Jupiter. They're not going to occult it because they're pretty small, but what you'll be able to see is those shadows being cast onto the cloud tops of Jupiter, which the best view I ever had of it, or maybe the most surprising view I ever had of it, was I was using one of the little 80 millimeter achromatic refractors, so commonly referred to as like an ST80, which is an 80 millimeter 3-inch telescope with a 400 millimeter focal length, and they're pretty inexpensive. They at the time they were like around $100. Now you can get them for 125 or 130, so they haven't really even gone up much in price. But they're pretty decent little scopes if you play with them and kind of trick them out a bit and blacken them down on the inside. And my cousin showed up. It was Christmas Eve, and he walks over. He's like, "What are you looking at?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm looking at Jupiter." And he walks over and goes, "What are the black dots?" And I'm like, "Wait, black dots?" And I hadn't noticed them, and looked in, and a shadow transit had really just sort of come around and become visible just in the few minutes we had caught up, and I'd sort of put it back on Jupiter for him. So, and that's my cousin who actually does our music.
oh, wow,
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
yeah. So
Neat
that's
connection.
neat to see.
Yeah, the shadow transits on Jupiter are one of my favorite things to observe in the solar system. And on a night of good seeing, that shadow can be such a crisp, round dot, and it's just so obvious once you see it. Now, in comparison to how large Jupiter is, it's a fairly small dot, but once you catch it with your eye, it just is so apparent.
Yeah, and you don't need a lot of power to see it either. Like that night, I think I was using, say, like a 5 millimeter eyepiece. So it really, you can start to discern this anywhere from 50 to 100 power. Probably for this one, I'm going to use around 100 power in my 60, and that should be more than adequate to pull this out. So yeah, I mean that's kind of like our planet roundup. But new moon occurs on Friday, May 22nd. And so kind of like in a way, like this is what you and I enjoy doing most. And usually we're at a dark sky site for the new moon in May. In fact, this is only the second time in the 11 years I've lived here where you and I aren't planning to go and observe that weekend together,
Yeah,
which is
and
kind of
we did plan, but our plans were taken away
yes,
from us because of
yes,
pandemic. And
that's
if this is the least of our problems, we have a great life, and certainly there's larger issues at play here. But I am a little saddened that we're not able to go down to our favorite site at Grasslands National Park and take in some dark skies.
yeah, it is closed up. They wrote me and said do not come, and that was just this week. Even though where we live, they're sort of reducing some of the restrictions. They told us that 100% we are off. We are not going down there. So yeah, the only other time we ever missed was 5 years ago, and I had surgery and I was out of commission. And then I think you guys were planning to go down, but then they canceled it because we ended up having a big sleet and rain and really
Yeah.
cold. Like it went down to -5, -6 at night after it had like rained all day and didn't crack, above 5 degrees Celsius. It was just like pretty brutal. So yeah. So maybe the same thing will happen this year and we won't miss it, right? So,
Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's too bad, but uh, so what would you have looked at, Chris, had we been going down there?
well, the Milky Way is a pretty big showdown there.
Yeah.
You get out to a dark sky and you can look up and see that big band of star clouds that goes from and at this time of year it's going to be rising in the northeast and extending sort of around down to the southeast, and then throughout the night it's going to rise higher and higher until it's basically running almost directly through the zenith points, directly overhead, coming right from the south, right up overhead, and then down into the north. And I just like to spend my time just cruising that band and picking up some nebulas and star clusters and really big stuff. And really, typically that weekend is kind of like our first, really good weekend out, that we all look forward to. But how about you, Shane? Like, what would you maybe be looking at on one of these nights?
Well, so I usually have two approaches. One is what would I be looking at in my backyard? And then the other is what would I be looking at if I'm under a dark sky? If we were going down to grasslands, there's an item on my list that I'd really like to take a stab at that I just haven't tried yet. It's in Virgo, and it's not a galaxy, which is typically what you're looking
Can
at
I
in
guess?
Virgo.
Can I guess what it is?
Yeah,
I bet you it's something like 3C-273.
that's it. Yep.
This is
Yeah,
not pre-planned, but
yeah, yeah. So
we're now
um,
mixing astrology and astronomy.
yeah, yeah. So 3C273 is a quasar, which is a quasi, what does that stand for? Quasi interstellar radio source, I believe.
Yeah,
So what,
quasi-stellar radio source. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so what is interesting about this is it's likely the furthest object that one can observe with a moderate telescope, which
Yeah,
is what you and I have.
it's like 4 billion light years away or something like that.
I think two or two and a half
Yeah.
billion light years away. But it's also potentially one of the brightest objects in the entire universe.
Huh.
It has an absolute magnitude of near -27.
Mm.
So just reading Wikipedia here, if this thing was as far as Pollux, so that's in the constellation of Gemini, it would appear as bright as our sun, even at that distance.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Wow.
So this thing comes in at an apparent magnitude of 12.9. So it's attainable in a 5-inch refractor, maybe even a
Yep.
4. And I'd like to give it a try. There's another quasar. I think it's the double quasar in Ursa Major, or the Big Dipper. And I think that one's like 7 billion light years away.
Oh, okay.
But that's magnitude 16 or 17, and you're needing at least probably 20 inches of aperture to pull that one in.
Yeah. I've seen 3C-273. Yes, in an 8-inch reflector.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Looks like a star. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's just kind of neat. I don't think you really see the galaxy, if I recall it correctly.
Yeah, I don't think you do.
The galaxies.
And if anybody's interested in maybe tackling this one, Burnham's Celestial Guide, Volume 3, on page 2101, there is a finder chart there for this quasar.
Yeah, I think that's what we used. In full disclosure, I didn't hunt it down, but a good friend of mine did. And then after he hunted it down, then I had a look, and I remember it. Yeah, because there's not a lot of stars in that area.
No.
And especially through an 8-inch, you're not pulling in a lot of background stuff. So, yeah, I mean, like we kind of sorted it through and went back and forth. Like that's what we did that evening. He hunted it down, and I was really just moral support, if I can even say that. So yeah, it's worth doing for sure. Yeah, I wish, of course, now I do a lot more sketching, as you know. I wish I'd sketched it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But you should try. You should do a sketch of it, because I think you're actually a fairly decent person with a pen. So give that a shot.
Maybe I will.
Yeah.
yeah, so that would be one thing on my list. A couple other things that I like to work on in the dark sky or the dark sites. Um, the NGC finest list from the RASC is just kind of a neat one to play around with,
Hmm.
as well as Stephen James O'Meara's various books.
Deep
Where
sky
he's
treasures and
yeah,
all
yeah.
that.
He
Yeah.
has a lot of interesting objects that he observed primarily with a 4-inch refractor.
Yeah.
So again, it's a very modest telescope that a lot of amateurs, it's within their reach to own and operate.
Yeah.
So great, great resources there.
Yeah. In fact, I think he used Genesis for a while. So
Yes, for quite a few years. Yeah,
I think so. I think
yeah,
if I'm remembering this all correctly, I think yeah, he was using a scope very similar, kind of near identical to yours. Oh, I think his might have been a version one, and yours is the
yeah,
SVF or whatever it is, which is a second or third generation. I believe you know more about that stuff than I do.
yep. No, you're correct. You're correct.
Good.
And then in the backyard, I like to tackle the solar system stuff that we've talked lots about, the planets and our moon primarily, but also double stars. I love working through the Cambridge Double Star Atlas. There's highlighted objects or highlighted double stars that the author Bruce, I think it's McAvoy, points out as kind of showpiece double stars, and those are great from the backyard because light pollution really doesn't impact your double star observing.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah. The one thing I'm sort of gearing up for is maybe to try to see some surface detail on Mercury over
Oh,
the coming apparitions. This is more of a long term plan. I've often thought about doing that, so I'm just trying to get the right setup for that. So yeah, that's going to be my project over probably the next year or so is to try to see that. Now that I've seen the clouds on Venus, I feel like there's no stopping me now with these little telescopes. So yeah, we'll see.
yeah.
And then of course we have Mars coming into a favorable opposition here on October 13th. So I continue to work towards that, and will be those observations will really start to be coming along in June or so. But I will be getting up and making observations of it, in the mornings when it's good, steady, clear, um, and some mornings when it's not. Apparently.
Well, and if there's one thing we learned during the last favorable opposition is, because of the atmosphere or the potential for dust storms on Mars, uh, when there are no dust storms, it's good to wake up early and get some observations in because you can lose an entire season of Mars observing if a
Yeah.
dust storm overtakes the entire planet like it did 2 years ago.
Yeah, so usually I do observe Martian oppositions, and then for whatever reason, the one in 2018, I decided I wasn't gonna, and then it was like it ended up getting dusted out it for the most part anyway. I kind of miss having seen that. I may have gone out and looked once or twice with my class, but I didn't run like an observing campaign on it because I find with Mars you really have to kind of camp out on it to see the details. So not sure if I mentioned this, but did I mention I was kind of able to see the northern polar cap the other morning.
Oh no, you didn't mention that.
Yeah, it was like flaring white on the edge, and then I kind of got it focused, and kind of where I'd seen the flaring, and then was eventually able to focus down, and that's where it was. And I looked up at the at the Sky and Telescope prediction software, and then on the opposite towards the southern side, I could see some what I thought might be dark shading, and yeah, it turned out that that did line up. Now to say this is observations of any quality is a bit of a stretch because it was still so unstable and it's still so low and it's still so small. But Mars gets to zero magnitude this month in May, so
Oh wow.
yeah, yeah. Hopefully it's coming along. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of galaxy month in a way. This is when we're looking out in the early evening towards intergalactic space versus looking towards the interior of our own Milky Way galaxy. So we're looking out towards Virgo and Leo and Jupiter, or not Jupiter, but Ursa Major. Before the planets get nice and high. So yeah, it would be really nice to get out. So I love looking at that Markarian's chain of galaxies
Yeah, yeah.
up in Virgo as well, which is a chain of I forget how many that count as that chain, but I think in my little scope I can see like 7 or 8 of them, and then they form this sort of meandering chain of all these galaxies. And then I like looking at M87, which is close by. It's a large spheroidal galaxy, and that's the one I think it was last year or the year before that they did that 3D model of, or they were able to get some really good imaging of the black hole in that one,
Oh yes, yeah, yeah.
which is
I
really,
remember.
yeah, not that you can't see that, of course, in any kind of backyard telescope, but I think some people have seen the jet from it. I've read some sort of internet
Visually?
tales. Yeah, visually, I
Wow.
guess, like is that's sort of, one of those stories that astronomers sit around and talk about around the campfire on a cloudy night kind of thing. But I have heard that in some circles. So I was actually chatting. Speaking of people with big telescopes, chatting to a friend of mine, and he had a 25-inch that was f47 that he built into a lowrider. So it was had 3 mirrors, and so you could sit or stand flat-footed for the most part and look all around the sky. And then he took it out and reground it down to like f33 or something like that,
Holy
and
smokes.
has totally rejigged it. So yeah, he and I were chatting about maybe him coming out here after the pandemic and bringing out this monster telescope. So that's kind of what you need is like a 25-inch, and that 25-inch he built, I believe it's like the lightest 25-inch that anybody's ever built, because, and he could be pulling my leg, he told me it weighed originally, the original one that he had that was f47 with the 3 mirrors, he told me it weighed 80 pounds.
Wow, that is light
I
for something that large.
I know people that have 8-inch telescopes that weigh 80 pounds or close to it. So a 25-inch. Now, he's a particular person with a particular background and like created his own material to make it out of. Um, and it was something like, it seemed like styrofoam that was embedded with some sort of fancy NASA style epoxy of some sort. And then he had this big secondary mirror that was from some sort of satellite tracking something or other. It was like 7.8 inches, but it wasn't like, at a 45-degree angle like usually they'll have. He had it at like a 33 or something like that angle, and then it came down, and then he had a really large tertiary mirror, like a 3.5 or 4.5 inch or something, and then he had a diagonal. That was actually my idea. Was originally it just came straight out, and so you were almost like how you'd be looking through a refractor without a diagonal in.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like that. And I said, you should put a diagonal in it. And so we did that, and it was great because then we could almost use it like a refractor, right? Except that it was a 25-inch f4.7 reflector. And so we put mostly the Nagler 31 and cruise around the sky. But it was, yeah, it was a bit of a touchy telescope. But I think he's kind of reworked it. So I'd be really curious to see it. But he's pumping out these, they call them perfect tens, and they're these 10-inch telescopes they're teaching people how to build in Ontario. And then they kind of do some of the work, and they teach people how to, like, I think, like, even ground the mirrors, or people get the mirrors. People kind of do some of the work, and these guys just love building telescopes. So they really kind of handhold you. In fact, he's built a telescope for me mostly in the past with another observer, and they'll like cut all your wood for you and kind of, really kind of, spoon feed it to you if you really wanted to build one. So but he built this 10-inch, and to be honest, the 10-inch telescope that he built blew me away more than the 25, because it was perfect. Like, it was ridiculously beautiful. I could put it was f6, so not like really a 10-inch f6. You don't think of that as being like this special telescope, but we could put my 3.5 millimeter Pentax in it on almost any night, and it was just like it defied seeing, right? Like,
Wow.
we
Wow.
could,
That's a special telescope.
yeah, I mean, but he had, like, it was just built properly. It was very structurally sound, so you didn't get a lot of vibration, and it was super easy to track, even though not super light. Like, it wasn't super light. I bet you that telescope weighed maybe close to 80 pounds. Maybe not that much, but it wasn't like it's like an open truss, but I think it was like a 3 or 4 pole truss, maybe even more. But nothing like, it looked really like a really nice scope, but you think, well, 10-inch f6, and then you'd get in there, and I had the best views of Saturn I ever had. I remember we were in the parking lot of his work, and they did like a star party there, and we had everybody from his work come out, and I had brought the wrong. Anyway, I won't get into it, but I really couldn't use my telescope to good use that night. So I just took my 3.5 Pentax over to him, and I said, "Hey, can we try it?" And yeah, we tried it and just couldn't believe it. So I just sat there and I just tracked on Saturn all night. I probably looked at it for about 3 hours. Just unbelievable. So yeah, like the power. So yeah, what else? What else for May?
I don't know. I think that's probably a pretty good list there. For me, again, it'll be some planetary stuff and double stars mostly because of the pandemic lockdown.
Yeah,
Won't be leaving the house too much, but starting to dream a little bit of some July dark skies, because I think the way things are going, at least in our province, that some of the restrictions will be opened up, that we should be able to get to some dark skies. Likely not do our public events. I don't, I don't
no,
think those will probably be allowed at that point, but I think we'll be able to do a little bit of camping and some observing. So that's my hope. Keep my
yeah,
fingers crossed.
good stuff. Well, that sounds great, Shane. So thank you very much, folks, for listening to podcast 9 of the Actual Astronomy podcast, and hopefully people can go out and take a look at some of these planets.